Now my GPX750R is a true icon of the 80s. Back in the 80s, all the manufacturers were making gains in technology. The bikes got more and more exciting each year. And at the end of the 80s, this is what they had. And you could watch this in 4K, just adjust your device. So here we are in absolutely the best time of the year. It's not too cold in the morning, not too hot when you get home. It's been beautiful lately. Today promises to be pretty much the same. And looking back to the 80s, I always wanted to add one of these to my collection. I had various chances to have one, and none of it really panned out, but later in life I wound up owning two of them. And that's why I treasure this one. I did a 500-hour restoration on it. I tried to make it as much my bike as possible, my own paint job, my own paint work, stenciling, and thank you, John Pathia, for all the help with that. And among other things, I wanted to have a dead reliable, comfortable bike that was reliable. I spared no expense during the restoration and no amount of time. But what has happened is since that restoration, I've had nothing but a perfectly reliable, fun bike to ride, and it never disappoints me. And no matter where I go with this bike, somebody always mentions, I didn't know Kawasaki made that model. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, I was never lucky enough to own one new back in that time window that these were new. I had a lot of other things going on in my life and just couldn't step up to the plate and get a new one. But I am so glad I got this one right now. And I can remember going to places where I would see people that had a new one, and I know Ray had one in Florida at one time, and other people, friends of mine, that had this version of the bike, and this was one of the most popular. I don't know, they sold a lot of these back in the day. I think back in the day, one of the things all the manufacturers wanted was more horsepower, of course, and bigger displacement and whatever. But this was such a good compromise. The bike is nimble, it's lightweight, it's light like a 600 is. It just comes on the pipe at, I don't know, at 10, 11,000, just before redline. It just feels great. Back in the day, the bikes were a little bit less focused. They weren't really track bikes in disguise that were very uncomfortable to ride or needed thousands of dollars worth of maintenance every year or ate the tires up like you were at a donut shop. These bikes were such good compromises, and you can actually go on a real ride like I go on almost every day in the lake area here. Beautiful in the morning, beautiful no matter what time of year you go. The scenery is great, and that cool air in your face, it's just wonderful. And I've had so many of my friends that have bought these focused bikes that really are great for one thing, like an example, track day or whatever. And somewhere down later in their life, they look back at it and they go, yeah, that was fun in the day, but the nice thing about this bike is this bike's gonna never go out of style, number one. And it's never not fun to ride. It doesn't need all this high-end maintenance that some bikes do. It doesn't eat the tires up every 3,000 miles. It's just, and you can do the maintenance yourself. It's an easy bike to maintain. The body work comes right off. There's so many things about the bike that you don't see right away. And the comfortable riding position, a great seat, and as if everything else was not enough, the bike gets great mileage. It's a good combination. Speaking about the 80s, there were a lot of great bikes in the 80s. Boy, there was no shortage of them. But everything that the manufacturers tried back then, the forks, that non-bottoming forks, everybody had their own version of it. This bike has an air shock. They were experimenting with different things that I don't know how many of them really played out in the end. But if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have the bikes we have now, like on my MT-09, all of the features and the safety features and adjustable everything. It all started somewhere, and I think it started in the 80s. Now, I know some of my friends didn't have certain bikes during their lifetime for whatever reason. And later in life, when you get a little more comfortable and you have a few extra dollars, they build a beautiful collection. And I've been able to build a very humble collection. Now, one of my favorite parts of every ride is cruising through these little villages that seem off the beaten path, and there's just beautiful back roads here. It's always a little bit shady, a little cooler when the weather gets hot, and of course in the winter when they salt the roads, they're plenty salty. And like other bikes in my collection, it shares a lot of things. It's an all-weather fighter. It's not a focus bike that does one or two things well at the cost of everything else. It's the bike that does a lot of things really well, and this is a good example of that kind of a bike. And for me, it's a bike I finally got possession of later in life, and I look back at the years I didn't have one with a little regret, but I am so happy I got two of them now. Luciano gets credit for finding this. We found it in a, I don't even want to say where we found it, in a dumpster, in a container that belonged on a container ship to South America. But from that day on, I have fallen in love with this bike. And actually, a little known story, there was a time I had seen one for sale really cheap, and I was thinking about getting a third one, but I guess common sense got the better of me back then. And I know some of my friends like to buy and sell bikes on a regular basis and restore them, and that kind of makes them happy. But I am really happy to have the collection I have now, and I'm so happy that I was able to build it at this point in my life when I really can basically enjoy it every single day. And the suspension on the bike and the seat and the bars with the risers under them make this an extremely, I mean really extremely comfortable bike to ride on an all-day ride. It really is. Now, my other track bike, the 1000cc FZR, when I stopped riding that on a track and went to riding this, I actually enjoyed this bike more than the FZR. Hard to believe, but this was a lot of fun on the track. And we have just had the best of all worlds today. It has just been perfect temperature, a perfect day, bike running like a Rolex watch, and I had that extra cup of coffee. I'm even still awake at the controls, but it's time to get back to the farm. spectacular day. Do you believe this day? Hey, if you live north of here or south of here, it can't be this nice. Perfect. Ready for coffee on the porch. As I get home, I know she's cooking. They're doing construction work across the street. Listen to all the noise. Oh my God, it sounds like terrorism. Anyway, this bike was an icon, and to me, it's still an icon. So thanks a lot for watching. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the like button if you did, and thank you so much for watching.